Welcome to Heel Toe Corner Club. I'm Marcus, owner of Heel Toe Automotive, and I'm here today to show you how to change the rear brake pads on your 2021 and newer Acura TLX Type S. This job is really pretty similar to most other Hondas that you've done. It does have an electronic parking brake in the back, which you'll find out doesn't really mean a whole lot. Come with me and I'll show you how to get this really pretty simple job done. Don't pay a dealer to do this for you. You got this. Okay, to do the rear brake pads on this TLX, you're going to need a couple of tools. One tool is going to be a, what size is this? 7mm hex driver. This is going to go through the back of the calipers that hold them to the bracket. You've got little plastic covers that you can pop off of there, and this tool just fits right in the backside. Once you get the black covers off, you just kind of find where that wants to be in there. Make sure it's fully seated. And they are not very tight, so don't worry about having to kill it. Just make sure that they're fully seated before you start turning. You don't want to strip these guys out. Do that on the top and on the bottom. Now that you have the caliper bolts off, let's remove the spring. Apply a little pressure here and just unhook it, and it pops right off. With all the fasteners off of the caliper, it slides right off of the bracket and leaves the pads just behind. Set it down behind here. The brake pads come out just like so. All right, here's our new brake pads. Honda pads. Here's the part number. I'll put a link in the description so you can pick some up for yourself, along with probably a link to the front pads too. So these are Honda factory pads, and you'll see that they have this logo here which says ATE. That's the manufacturer of these brake pads. It's actually not called ATE, it's pronounced ATE. This is a European brand, which I think is pretty interesting that Honda has used Brembo for the front, ATE for the rear. Just something that I'm not used to seeing on typical Honda. So you notice the pad thickness between the old and the new. As you can see, I've worn away quite a bit of material. I've done some track days and such with this car, and the rear brake pads have suffered. Not quite as much as the front brake pads, but definitely time to change them. You notice that these brake pads actually have an arrow on them, which is going to show you the direction of rotation. When you put this brake pad in here, the brake rotor is going this way, so it kind of follows the arrow. You'll notice that there's a wear indicator on this brake pad as well. When you get all the way down to that, it'll start making a squealing sound that's super annoying. I didn't quite get that far down when I wore out my brake pads, but I am replacing them anyway. And this always goes on the inside of the brake rotor, and it typically goes on the trailing edge of the brake pad. And to put the new pads in, they really just drop right into place. With the brake pads out of the car, you could pretty much just drop them right back in again. These rotors don't wear out too much, and they usually don't result in any shaking or any kind of like negative braking behavior. So you can get multiple pad changes out of the existing rotors. But if you are going a little further and changing the rotors, like I'm going to do today, I'll show you how to get that done too. When you go to pull the rotor off the car, you're going to find that this little Phillips head screw is probably going to be the most difficult part of the whole job. It's a Phillips head screw, but it's very soft, it strips extremely easily, and they're almost always seized and stuck in place. I hate these things. A screwdriver almost never gets them out. You can use an impact driver, but every time I've tried to use one, it either strips it out or I'll break one of the bits on the impact driver. Instead of spending a small fortune on a high quality impact driver, these are all you need to get these screws out. Even if they're stripped, a hammer and a chisel will get these screws out in just about any situation. So what I like to do here, and you can see I've already done this one, there's a little bit of a tooth in it. But what I like to do, I'll show you fresh, is create a little dimple here, just like that. And then as I rotate the handle of the chisel this way, I'll put a moment on the screw in a tangent to actually break it loose. And you can see that loosens it up pretty easily almost every single time, right? Now, once you get these things going, they come out super easy. And you know what I like to do once I get them out? Throw them away. You don't need them. All they do is just hold the rotor in place while the assembly of the car is happening from the factory. To be perfectly honest with you, you don't even really need them. Get rid of it. It has nothing to do with the safety or integrity of your brakes whatsoever. You might be curious what these other two threaded holes in the rotor are for. Well, if your rotor is really stuck on here, if it's seized on the hub or it's just not coming off, what you could do is take a couple of bolts and put them in those holes. I think they're just regular M8 bolts, and tighten them down with a ratchet, and they will slowly drive the rotor off the hub. Of course, we don't need to do that today, but I have had to do it in the past. Just throw a couple of bolts in there and it will pop the rotor right off for you if you're not getting it done any other way. To get the bracket off of the knuckles so we can get the rotor out, you need to remove two bolts on the back side of the bracket. They're 17mm heads. I like to show off my tools sometimes. It's a double-sided closed end ratchet. This side is a 17 and that side is a 14, and you switch the direction right here. This is actually for doing timing belt tensioners on old like B and D series engines, but it's so handy. I use it for jobs like this. You can use just a conventional ratchet and wrench if you want to. I'm gonna rock this thing. Bracket off. Before I start putting everything back together again, one thing that you need to realize is that this caliper piston has expanded out of the caliper body as the pads have worn thinner and thinner and thinner. We're putting new pads in, so we're going to have to retract this caliper piston back into the body so that we can fit it over the rotors and the pads, the new pads which are thicker. How do you do that? What you can do to compress this is use a clamp over the whole body. They have a special tool for this, and I actually have a caliper spreader tool, but it's not designed for this sort of caliper. You're going to use a clamp to push. With my clamp, I have to kind of like squeeze and then let go and work it in. But you can see that the piston is slowly making its way back into the body. See these little teeth in here? You've got to rotate this piston so that it will drive inside there. Righty-tighty. If you spin it, it will turn down inside the body. That's a good way to know when it's all the way in though, because it'll bottom out. Oh, what's this? That's not the factory rotor. I've got a racing brake two-piece rotor that I'm putting on here, which is a really prime part. I've got another video that talks all about racing brake rotors and the two-piece option on the TLX Type S. Definitely check that out. I'll make sure to put a link in the description so you can see that in all of its glory. You can tell when you've got the caliper piston all the way compressed. If you spin it like this, it'll come to a stop. The spinning and pushing motion, oh, there it is, it came to a hard stop right there. The spinning and pushing motion on these pistons will help them compress even more if you don't have the right caliper tool. And you've got to get it in all the way, otherwise it won't fit over the new pads. And this racing brake rotor, which is ever so slightly thicker than the factory one. You're going to have a little bit of resistance as you push against the spring on the brake pad. But you can get the caliper bolt lined up and get them started. Come back with your hex tool to finish the job. There's a lot of threads on these. All right, when you're tightening down these fasteners, the caliper bracket bolts are, and I'm pretty approximate with this, but I'm going to say they're probably around 40 foot-pounds, maybe 45. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I go by feel. They can go pretty tight. These are not going to be super tight, maybe around 20 or 25 foot-pounds, I'm guessing. Ultimately, if you're doing this job, you can do it by feel. You just want to make sure you go until your fasteners come to a stop and then give them a quick little snug after that. These aren't critical torque items. You just don't want them loose. All right, job done there. There you have it, rear brake pads and a fancy rotor on a 2021 TLX Type S. You'll notice I didn't use any lubricant or anything on here. You could certainly put some behind the brake pad piston, the brake pad where the piston contacts if you wish, or on the slides here for the ears of the pads. Didn't seem like there was any here from the factory, and a lot of times I don't use that lube anyway unless I'm getting a pesky noise or some other weird activity that I'm trying to get rid of. But typically you don't need it. Also, it's not typical that you would be replacing the rotors if you're just doing a normal pad swap. Although if you do want to go into a really sick looking rotor like these, watch our other video on the Racing Brake 2-piece rotors and learn all about why these for the rear and for the front are a great benefit to your TLX. One thing to note, on this particular rotor, that pesky rotor screw doesn't even line up with the hole in the hub. That's fairly common. That can happen with aftermarket brake rotors. Honestly, don't worry about it. I've had many people contact me saying like, oh, is it safe to go without those screws? Absolutely. Save yourself the headache. The next time you need to pull the rotors off, you'll thank yourself. And there you have it. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it every time you watch one of our videos. Please do leave a comment down below if you enjoyed this video or want us to do something else to the TLX. Subscribe to our channel and definitely come back next time you're curious about anything we're doing with our TLX Type S. It's falling apart. It's falling apart.
It's okay. Why don't you say?
I can do it again that it won't fall apart. I'm just going too far. And there you have it. Rear brake pads and rotors on the 2021 TLX Type S. Please subscribe to our channel. That way you'll get all the other updates as we go through this car and change stuff here and there, make a little bit more performance or just simple how-tos. That's what Heel Toe is all about, providing you some content that's really going to be helpful for you that you enjoy watching. Hope you have a great day. Heel Toe is in your corner.